Hi, I'm Thomas Graves, and welcome back to the Black Mold of Grief. In this episode, we're going to get a little more back into the biographical story of my losses and talk about my nephew, Matthew, who I lost just a few years ago during COVID. In the middle of lockdown in 2020, I got a call from my younger brother, Matthew, that my nephew, Matt, had been in a serious car wreck, but he didn't know any more details and that he would call me when he got more. And then my phone rang again, literally like 3 minutes later. And he told me that Matt had passed at the scene. And that was about all that we said. And I just needed to call my brother back a couple of minutes later. And when he answered, he just said, "Hey," and I said, "Hey," and then I didn't know what else to say, and I just told my brother I just needed a call, and that was the whole phone call. I couldn't believe that we'd lost our nephew. But my nephew was 27, and he was married, and he left behind a 7-month-old little girl. And after law school, he got a job as an assistant district attorney in Galveston. And he did that for quite a few, not quite a year. But when he was at trial on a particular case, at the end of the trial, he went to shake the opposing counsel's hand, and the gentleman gave Matt a card, his business card. And he said, if you ever want to become a defense attorney, he said, I want you to give me a call. And at that point, Matt and his wife were expecting, and that job would have paid more. And so the next day, Matt called the office, and whoever answered the phone, he explained he'd gotten this card from the day before from this guy named Mark. And the woman was confused because they didn't have an opening. And so she said, well, I'll have to talk to Mark and I'll call you back. So she finally talks to Mark and said, I didn't know we had an opening. And Mark said, we don't, but for that guy, we'll make one. And so that's how we got the job. And so he was just great. And at Matt's service, Mark went up to my brother-in-law and said, I just saw something in your son that I wanted on my team. And if he wanted to come on board, I'd make a spot. And the other thing about Matt was at a service, one of the prison guards that, he would have to go to prison to represent his clients and meet with them. One of the prison guards showed up, and she told my sister, she said, I had to come today because I had to tell you that your son respected every one of his clients in ways that other attorneys don't. And she used a lot more colorful language than I'm going to share here. But she said, most attorneys don't respect their clients, but your son did. And he respected me and everybody he came in contact with. And I had to come here to tell you that. And my sister said that she shared with her that Matt's approach was that no one should be judged on their worst day of their life. And so that was his approach. And my my personal favorite memory of Matt was actually when he was 3, and I was home visiting, and we were all going somewhere. My sister Patty was driving; she had a minivan, and so Matt was in his car seat directly behind her, and I was sitting in the bench seat next to him. And then his sister Elizabeth, who was about 18 months, was in her car seat behind us. And we had gone through a drive-through and gotten breakfast burritos. And so we're heading wherever it was we were going. And so Pat and I are talking, and she's driving. And so I'm feeding Matthew, and I've got his breakfast burrito in my left hand, and I've got his drink in my hand. And so my food is on the seat, but I didn't have anywhere to put my drink. So I was holding my drink in between my feet. And so Patty turns, and my drink falls over. And so she wasn't mad, but she was just confused as to why I wasn't holding my drink. And so I said, well, I'm holding Matthew's burrito and this. And what was happening was whenever he wanted to bite of his burrito, he would tilt his head to the left, and I'd give him a bite. And then when he would drink, he'd tilt it to the right and give him a drink, and he would just go back and forth. And so when I told my sister, I'm feeding him, she leans forward and looks in the rearview mirror straight at him, and she's like, Matthew, you quit taking advantage of Uncle Tom. And so Matthew just gets this smirk on his face, and he reaches over and he grabs the burrito and he grabs his drink and he sits back in his car seat and just grins at me like, I got you, And I'm looking at him like, little twerp, and he made it worse by every time he would eat his burrito, he'd like tilt his head to the left, take a bite, and then if he'd take a sip, he'd tilt his head to the right and take a sip. And that was Matthew. He was never malicious at all, but he was quick. And if he could pull a fast one on you, he did, just to make you laugh. And he just had a great sense of humor and would always pull a fast one if he could. So, and then the other memory I had of him as a kid is he was always into sport. Even from a little kid, he was into sports, and he ended up becoming a great baseball player. Played on a lot of travel teams, and but when he was 4, I was over there watching him and Elizabeth while my sister and brother-in-law were out running errands. And we were in the driveway, and he had one of those little 3-foot plastic basketball hoops. And he said, Uncle Tom, you want to play? And I looked at him and I said, I don't know how to play, but I wasn't actually talking about basketball. It was the first time I was honest about my depression, and I was referencing the weight of my spirit. And I was saying that I couldn't play. And he got confused, obviously, because I'm like way taller than this little basketball hoop. And he said something about it to my sister, because the next day she mentioned it. And she knew I didn't know anything about sports, but she was like, you don't have to know how to do this. You just kind of play. And I wasn't honest with her, and I just kind of mumbled something or whatever. And the night before Matt's wedding, I think we talked about it. I can't quite remember, and I think he brought it up, and I believe that I was honest with him at that point. But he was the first person I ever was honest with about my depression. And I don't know why I felt safe with him, but I did. Even if I didn't fully explain it, but it just kind of came out. And so at the service, I found out from his pastor, Jesse, who did a great homily on him. Matthew had 3 sayings on his mirror that he would look at every morning to kind of focus him for the day. And one of them was Ephesians 6:25, which is, husbands, love your wives just as Christ loves the church and gave himself up for her. And Pastor Jesse pointed out that that's like the toughest verse to live up to. And so Matt picked the toughest verse for himself to try and live up to. And the other verse was from Harry Potter, when Dumbledore said, "It is our choices, Harry, that show us who we truly are, far more than our abilities." And then the last one was actually from Wedding Crashers, when Vince Vaughn said to Owen Wilson, "Rule number 76, no excuses, play like a champion." And the combination of those three things really embody Matthew, because most people who are going to put a Bible verse on their mirror are not going to put a quote from Wedding Crashers right with it. But that was Matthew. I mean, he kept a very high standard for himself, but he also believed in finding good in everything. And when he found it, he embraced it. And it didn't matter if it came from Vince Vaughn and Owen Wilson. If it was something that had value, it had value. And he did not judge where it came from. And that really echoed through everything that the prison guard said, everything that Mark said. And it was just Matthew. And he just believed that people should just keep trying. And he believed, even if you believed differently from him, it was okay as long as you lived what you believed. And so he would not argue with you, but if you were living differently than what you claimed, he would argue with you. And he wouldn't try to convert you to his belief. He would just make certain that you were living what you believed. And if you weren't doing that, then the attorney came out, and you better have some answers as to why you weren't living what you said you believed. And so for me, of all the people I've lost, Matthew challenges me the most, because there's a line in the song, "I Want to Bring You Joy," that says, "You would understand, but I would be ashamed if you brought your smile and I brought my pain to our first conversation in heaven." And I think both my moms and now my sister and Jenny, if I came to them and I said, I tried to be happy after you passed, but I just never got there, I think they would comfort me and understand. But I think Matthew would challenge me. And I think he would say, "Uncle Tom, if you believed I was in heaven, and if you believed that you'd see me again, why didn't you play like a champion? No excuses." And so that is very challenging for me. And so with the black mold and the floods, I don't try to play like a champion in the flood, and I don't try to play like a champion when I'm airing out the pain to prevent black mold. But in between the floods, as painful as it is, I try to follow rule number 76, no excuses. Play like a champion. And it isn't lost on me that at 4 years old, Matthew asked me to play, and I said I couldn't. And then he grew up to be a man who had rule number 76, play like a champion, on his mirror that he looked at every day. And for me, what I had to learn about pain and what shifted was I used to think that holding on to pain was a sign of respect to the people I lost. And that if I let go of my pain, how would they know I still love them? Because when they left, that's what came, was the pain. And if I let go of that, how would they know that I love them? And it was a thing where the more pain I could hold on to, the more they would know I loved them. And so it kind of became a challenge to hold on to as much pain as possible so they'd know how much I loved them. And again, I think the other 4 people I lost would not like that I did that, but they would be compassionate if I did. And I think Matthew would challenge me on that. And so knowing that, he challenges me to play like a champion. This week's version is the version that makes me think of Matthew the most. It's done by a gentleman named Anthony Cubbage out of Pennsylvania. And it is a very singer-songwriter, Alison Krauss kind of version. And the reason I think of Matthew the most when I listen to this is it's very gentle. It just feels like you're sitting on a back porch on a swing when it's raining and you're just longing for the person and you just want to give them a hug one more time and say goodbye the right way. So there isn't, in this version, there's no anger, there's no asking why. There's not a lot of pain in the sense of they're gone. There's just a longing to say goodbye the right way. And so I just feel that with Matthew a lot. And this version really captures that feeling for me.
If I don't make a change, I'll meet you in the clouds, and this emptiness will be all I talk about. You would understand, but I'd be ashamed if you brought your smile and I brought my pain to our first conversation in heaven. Oh, I wanna bring you joy. Oh, I wanna bring you joy. I don't care how tough it is, I'm gonna live, 'cause I wanna bring you joy.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of The Black Mold of Grief. Next week, I'm going to talk about my most recent loss of my sister Teresa, which I'm still in the first year of that loss, so it's my most raw at the moment. But in the meantime, I do hope that something I've shared here today helps you bring a little more joy to your first conversation in heaven.